carolinaprepper.com. If you're looking for quality food storage for hiking, fishing, hunting, basic survival needs, or just for everyday use, check out our food storage line at carolinaprepper.com. We also carry other fine quality products, such as our can-can concealment holsters for men and women. Keeping your firearm under cover and within reach puts confidence in your hands in any situation. Our products are 100% American-made. Check us out today at carolinaprepper.com.
And now, it's time to Stand for Truth with the host of Stand for Truth Radio, Susan Knowles.
And welcome to the program, everyone. I am your host, Susan Knowles. Please check out my website at susanknowles.com. And don't forget to follow Stand for Truth Radio with a variety of shows I do, such as Knowles on the News and God's Views on Political News with my co-host, Bill Cloud. To hear all the podcasts, just go to Spreaker.com or download the Spreaker phone app and type in Stand for Truth Radio with Susan Knowles. Also, all the shows can also be heard on iHeartRadio, and the easiest way to find those shows is just to go to susanknowles.com and click on the iHeartRadio logo. You can't miss it, and it'll take you right there. Now, finally, follow me on Twitter at Susan Knowles, and you'll be all set. You won't miss a thing, which is I'm hoping that you will just continue to get all of our shows immediately as they happen. Now, my guest today is Charles Sasser. We'll be discussing his new book, Crushing the Collective, The Last Chance to Keep America Free and Self-Governing. And boy, is that book timely for what we're seeing today. Now, the book is due out on September the 5th. Charles is a full-time freelance writer, journalist, photographer. You can find more of his information at charlessasser.com. He's a veteran of both the United States Navy, where he was a journalist, and U.S. Army, where he's Special Forces, the Green Berets. He's retired after 29 years active and reserve service. As a former combat correspondent, he also served 14 years as a police officer in Miami, Florida, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he was a homicide detective. He has taught at universities, lectured nationwide, and traveled extensively throughout the world. His bio is included in Who's Who in the World. He is author of more than 60 published books and 3,000 to 4,000 magazine articles and short stories. His books have been translated into Chinese, Russian, Serbian, Thai, French, Spanish, and other language. I would say that Charles probably has a lot to say. He's been a contributor for a 12-book series of true crime books by Pinnacle and a contributor for a 12-book series for Time Life, The New Face of War. His work has appeared in at least 30 anthologies. At various times, Sasser has solo canoed the Yukon, solo sailed the Caribbean, motorbiked across the continent, raced camels in the Egyptian desert, dog sledded the Arctic, floated the Amazon River, dived for pirate treasure, and so much more that literally could take more than an hour to fill up it could easily fill up the show. He is also a professional motivational speaker and does dinner theater, starring in The Odd Couple as Felix, The Foreigner, The Cemetery Club, A Golden Fleecing, Never Too Late, Wedding from Hell, and others. He's also appeared as a guest on national TV and Good Morning America, Inside Edition, On the Record, Discovery ID, History Channel, Court TV, Geraldo Rivera, Fox and CNN, America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, Greta Van Susteren, and so much more. So let's welcome to the show Charles Sasser. Charles,
yes,
how
ma'am.
are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Considering everything in the world, I'm doing well.
Well, Chuck, I take it from reading all this stuff about you, you don't get out much.
No, I'm kind of a recluse,
Yes. Not very active. You don't go very many places. You're not well read and all those things. How do you filled in 12 lifetimes in one life?
God has been very, very good to me. I don't know. I've always had a wanderlust and a curiosity. Some of my I have degrees in history and in anthropology, and I'm interested in archaeology, so I visit Mayan ruins, and I'm especially interested in them. So I have so many interests that I just got back from climbing a mountain in New Mexico 2 weeks ago, looking for the Decalogue stone, which may be ancient Hebrew, which could change the early history of the U.S. according to the interpretations.
Wow.
I mean, so I just got these interests, and I just do them.
Well, it obviously leaves you some time that you can write, and I read your book, Crushing the Collective, and I really like it. I read it over the weekend as I was trying to watch to make sure that the United States wasn't burning down over the weekend at the same time. But I want to get into your book and talk about a lot of things in there. Now, you talk about collectivism in your book. And then that's part of the title of your book. Could you give us a quick summary about one or two of the important political theories that might still be viable today that you talk about in your book?
Well, for one, I think the main thing that I've always been interested is Alexander Tytler or Tyler. You can find the reference either way. His tyranny-liberty cycle, that all societies, all empires have risen and declined in the same manner. And it happens again, and it happened again throughout history. So in the book, I go back to the earliest history, and I always say that probably the freest freest people in the world were the early, pastoral people. If they didn't like what was going on in their particular village, they packed up their atlatl and took off. And so we've evolved away from the individual. All these centuries, and mankind's evolution has always been away from individuals into groups. The group is worth more than the individual. And but Alexander Tytler says we go through this series. We go from bondage to spiritual faith, and I think that spiritual is very important there. We go from that to liberty, like we did here in the 18th century. We go from that to abundance. Look how successful America has been, and the poorest people here are rich compared to much of the rest of the world. And we go from abundance, we get complacent about it. We expect it. And then we get apathetic. I mean, how many of us actually vote anymore? It is becoming a decreasing number of us that even bother to vote. And interview a man on the street and see how much he knows about our history, see how much he knows about our economics. Almost nothing. There's so much ignorance. So that leads to, the apathy and then to dependency. We got 47% of our people now depend upon the government in one form or another for their largesse. And we get almost half of our people who depend on the other half. We've got serious problems because you make a man dependent, you own the man. The next step is bondage, and America right now is in the dependency stage, I believe. And historically, it backs me up. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you, and I think that we've had 8 years of that, and people, it's hard once you get dependent upon the government to try to get yourself off of it. It's just too easy. As you said, some of the complacency, just sort of sit around and just wait for somebody else to take care of you or somebody else to do the thinking for you, and I think that we still see it today. I think we're trying to get rid of it. I think President Trump is doing a lot to try to get people to be more independent in a lot of respects, but I think it's going to take a long time.
Yes, I hate to be I try to be an optimist when it comes to this. I'm hoping that the man is going to be allowed. I am predicting that Obama, oh my gosh, he should have been impeached. I'm thinking that Trump will probably be impeached if he wins the next election. And these people are not going to stop. This stuff, this goes all the way back in America. This goes all the way back to the Frankfurt School. And the Frankfurt School originated in fascist Germany. Hitler didn't like them because they were commies. It was a internecine warfare, I said, between the commies and the fascists, who were virtually identical. And so they moved to England, and they moved from England in around 1945 to Columbia University. And with George Lukács, I think, and Marcuse, and some of these other people who were communists. And their whole idea was, they said, communism can only come to an undeveloped country by revolution. There cannot be a revolution as such in America and be taken over. It just won't happen. And Marcuse and Lukács knew that. So what they proposed was a long march through the institutions. That what they would do is they would simply take over all our institutions and destroy everything, from everything from religion, our culture, family, education, entertainment. Look at what has happened.
Yeah.
Especially in education now. I mean, it's so bizarre that you can't believe it's really occurring. I mean, free speech? No, not if you disagree. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. So we've been doing this long march through the institution has been going on a long time, and it's virtually complete. And so here I am again being pessimistic, but I think it may be too late for the country. And I'm supposed to be optimistic, but I can't be. I'm a historian.
Yeah.
So I look at this and I say it's too late. Look at Ronald Reagan. We had great hope when Ronald Reagan was elected president, and it was good. And then what happened afterwards? We go decline. We end up with Obama, who was going to make the transformation, the fundamental transformation of this country, and he darn near did.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's shuddering to see what has happened. But at any rate, so it didn't work for us. And then we got Trump now because the people, the common people, good old cowboys like me and so forth, we say, this guy, people have been in the military, just good people, that common sense people, I say.
Right.
People who have common sense. There's almost no common sense left anymore. And so they say, well, common sense is not allowed anymore, because if you have common sense, you're being reasonable, you're thinking for yourself, and as you point out in your book, I mean, really, it's about the collective is what these people want you to do. It's in my opinion, it's kind of what we've seen over the last week or so with Charlottesville and Boston and Dallas. It's groupthink, mob rule, if you will, in a lot of respects. Yeah. Yeah, I was an undercover journalist at Occupy Wall Street in 2011 in New York.
Yeah.
And so nobody knew who I was, but I'd go around questioning and talking to all these people, all these petunias. And they'd have signs up, free this, free education, free transportation, free housing, free food, free. And I'd say, who's going to pay for this? Well, the rich. Government will pay for it. And I said, well, who pays the government? Well, we can tax the rich. That's what we ought to do. In other words, but these people, they had no idea. These were college people, and they had no idea how the economy. And Obama, of course, and Pelosi, they endorsed these people. They endorsed them.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't believe it. You couldn't look, in that one square block, we had more crime, the highest crime rate in the nation that week I was there. I mean, these people were doping out. I mean, they were giving free dope there at tables. And I talked to the cops outside, and they said, "No, we're not allowed to do anything about it." And I said, "I'll help you bust these people. You want to bust?"
I know who the wrongdoers are. I know, but aren't we seeing that too? It's kind of like the police aren't allowed to do their jobs; they have to stand back because this is what. And I'll just call it what it is, or what I think it is. It's what the elites want in America. It's what and the elites are a part of just communism. I mean, in my opinion, what we're seeing is all communism, and we're seeing elites. And the reason that we have the police standing down and not letting them do it is because this is what they need to do to fulfill their plan, to create chaos and get in control.
Oh, absolutely. It's another institution. Law enforcement is another institution that has to be controlled, and that could be the most powerful institution. Look, let's go back to Soviet Russia. I mean, state police, and Obama was attempting to federalize the police when he came all these overseeing the police departments in the various cities, and I mean that was another step toward. I wouldn't be a cop now. I talked to all my cop friends and so forth. They said, no way would be a cop now. You can't do anything right. You're always at fault, no matter what happens.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's way too dangerous, and you don't have the your chief of police or the mayor, got your back. They don't have your back anymore. It's kind of like you're out there on your own and stand out there. We saw that. We saw that in Baltimore. With the shootings in Baltimore, where the police were told to stand down as people were throwing bricks at them and everything else, and the police were told to retreat. How ridiculous is that?
Look, it's not that I don't know what. I was a cop in Miami, Florida, in 1968, when Richard Nixon was selected as a Republican candidate over Miami Beach, and we had the riots in Liberty City, burned down several blocks and so forth. 5 people killed. I had 13 bullet holes in my police car after it was all over, and I ended up in the hospital. And you can see. So I know what's happening here. You can see it, and you know what most of it is ignorance, dependency, and outrage because black people, look, in the 1960s, you look at them statistically, there was very little difference between black culture and white culture then statistically. Crime rates were virtually the same. Out of wedlock was virtually the same. Actually, more black people, teenagers, were working than whites.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes on and on and on until we begin to say, you people are dependent upon government. You can't do anything without government's help. And therefore, once you make a person dependent, you have robbed him of his individuality. You have made him part of the collective, and he's controlled. And that's the worst thing you can do to look at what we did to the Indians. I lived on a reservation at Four Corners for a while. And I'm Indian. I'm Quarter Creek Indian. And my grandmother was a full-blood named Rachel Settingdown. And so, I grew up with Indians. But in Oklahoma, the Indians are different. They're part of the culture. But you go out west to the reservation, alcoholism, drug addiction, all these things, the same thing affects the reservations as affects the inner city ghetto. Same thing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with making them dependent upon government.
Well, it absolutely is. You're right. I grew up in North Carolina. I'm part Cherokee. And when I went, I didn't know how bad things were because in North Carolina, it just doesn't seem to be that bad on the reservations and everything. But it is. Yeah, but in New Mexico, you want to see how bad things are, go to New Mexico, and where you see literally women who are pregnant walking on the road who are drunk.
Yeah.
And a lot of it. And they have, they have ads telling you don't drink when you're pregnant and things like that, as if that's going to help.
Oh, yeah. See, and it has nothing to, I keep trying to tell everybody, it has nothing to do with race.
No, it doesn't.
It has to do with dependency and the idea of separating people into groups for power.
Yeah.
And so we've separated everybody into groups. And for political purposes, I don't know, Susan. I can look at all these things, and it's a little discouraging to look at what's happening and to understand what's happening.
No, I know. And we've kind of lived through it before, you and I. I mean, I lived through civil rights and in the South, and I saw there what was happening. I saw not until later when I started doing more, historical research on it, where there were groups where, of course, at that time blacks were segregated in particular groups, which should never have happened, but they were, no. And in those groups, they were flourishing. I'm talking about nightclub acts that names that you would know. We used to go there and perform, doctors, dentists, and these people had they were thriving. If you read the history, and nobody wants to hear that because it'll be racist to say that, but it's the truth. And people were thriving. And then when the government came along and we're here to help, it destroyed the family, destroyed the black family, the everything. Their ability to thrive financially, everything just destroyed. Yeah,
70% of black children are born out of wedlock. Mm-hmm. 70%. That means no fathers available.
Right.
And so you take the father away, then you create all kinds of crimes and everything else because there's no role models there anymore. And I worked a salt and pepper team in Miami for 4 years. Salt and pepper, that was a new experiment back then in '65. And a white partner and a black partner working in the black ghettos together.
Right.
And I saw the start of this. Before that year, I traveled for a year on a motorcycle before that, lived in a tent, worked odd jobs. And I lived with a black couple in Mississippi for a while and their family. And I love those people. I mean, we kept in contact for years, and a few kids still. And they were poor. You know, they were rural. But same way I live. They live the same way I live in cotton fields.
Yeah.
So I get to Miami, and I begin to see, and well, George, the Papa there, Papa says, what we haven't seen anything yet. We are being told now that it's Whitey's fault. This would have been in '64, after the Civil Rights Act. This is Whitey's fault, we're being told. And as a result of that, we're being taught to hate Whitey and to depend upon government for social justice. And I saw this begin to play out in the ghettos in Miami, with all the dudes hanging around on the street corners yelling "ooh, suey pigs" and shooting at cops. I had 3 of my personal friends shot and killed cops. While I was there. You saw, but the good people in the projects, a cop would get there because of dopers or whatever, and the good people run up and hug you and says, "Oh, you've got to get rid of these gangsters and stuff." I mean, they knew what was happening, and it was happening.
Yeah, and I mean, I lived through that too, where racial slurs I had racial slurs tossed at me and all that, and it was my time in school was terrible in most respects, because there was so much of that during the day of black people just hating white people, and it's funny because back then nobody really talked about it, so the white people were like, what did we do? I mean, they had no clue. And like in high school and middle school, we had no clue how we had made these people so angry, because we didn't know all the stuff that was going on. We were just kids going to school, but they were kids who were being taught by their parents and grandparents to hate white people. And it's just crazy. But what we're seeing today is just kind of that same hatred, only it comes from the elites who are trying to make us believe that America is still back there in the 60s, and they're not.
It's ridiculous. It's not any way. It's not any way at all. And that's difficult for people to understand. That this is, I'll say again, nothing to do with race.
Yeah.
And most white people, and I think most black people, they have really nothing against it just because of the color of the skin, but it's become that color of the skin is a predominant factor in our cities now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, and I think that people really do need to remember, that it isn't anything about race. I mean, we're being told that, and I think the young people, they're starting to believe it, but only because, number one, I think they're getting paid by George Soros and some other people.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's that collective, let's get in that collective mind. Whether you believe it or not, you better get into the collective and be a part of it, and come with us. That's what we're seeing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, our whole society is going toward the collective, toward dependency. Look, there's all kinds of studies right now that this technological age, people don't talk to each other anymore. They don't do anything anymore. We got 30% of our people are obese now because they sit around couch potatoing, playing video games and doing whatever they do with machines. And machines, so I've seen, you go to a restaurant and people, a family be sitting someplace, kids, mom and papa, they're all on their little machines, not talking to each other.
Right.
I mean, there've been these studies show that children don't mature properly now, that they don't become part of the community. They don't just meld into a community anymore because nobody knows each other anymore, because you don't take that time. All you do is communicate with what they said, every 4.3 seconds, if I recall. Young people are checking their cell phones.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a shame, and you make a good point though, because there's a certain age where kids will listen to their parents, and then when they become teenagers, they typically fall away a little bit from the parents and they listen to their peers more. But I think what we're seeing, because everybody has a cell phone, and all the kids, they get cell phones at 8 years old sometimes. I think it's less and less likely that they're going to listen to their parents, and they're going to be more influenced by the world around them and the activists of the world and other people that parents may not want them to listen to.
Yeah, peer pressure. It's peers. Peers are more important than, well, here we go, like 30-40% of kids are raised without fathers to begin with.
Right.
And that causes all kinds of pathologies. I mean, you say, well, fathers are not very important. Give me a break.
Yeah, they really are.
You've got to have some strength there. But even our men, Susan, if you look around you, where's John Wayne now when you need him? What we have are guys who are shaving their chest, getting the hair off their chest, using makeup and earrings and long hair, and getting be a bunch of wimps. There's not many real men left.
Well,
and
John
he knows you try to destroy them.
Yeah. Well, John Wayne would be looked at as a racist, homophobic, and anything else that you could think of today. And I was going to ask you about that, too, because I've seen sort of a trend where we're trying to change men, and we start with boys, and we change them to be more like women. I mean, we really do. And I know that not everybody's going to agree with me, but I've seen it in the classroom at schools. I've seen it in, the clothes that they wear and how they're told to now look a little bit less threatening, the skinny jeans, on and on and on. And that may sound funny to people, but it's a way of teaching a child that it's not okay to be a male.
Well, look at the toys now, non-gender toys, 32 different genders, according to Google, 32 different genders. That stuns me, just the whole idea of it. And we have our kids that like you say, from the very beginning, teach them that homosexuality is normal, natural, and desirable to begin with. And then we tell them, no, that we must make you more feminine, more sensitive. And therefore, look, what do they say? There's a large percentage of our boys in school that are now medicalized.
They are.
They're
drugged.
Ritalin and other things because they're acting like boys.
Right. And that's the absolute truth, because teachers a lot of times want boys to sit in their chairs with their hands folded and be quiet. And that's fine. Boys need to, pay attention and all that. But it's more pronounced now. And boys aren't those type of, typically, in the past anyway, they haven't been these quiet little flowers, that sit in their chairs and they move around. That's what boys do.
Well, you see, I have all kinds of anecdotes of these kinds of things. I went to a one-room school, went to an Indian school, went to, a country high school. And I would probably be on Ritalin if they'd had Ritalin then.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was hard for me. I mean, and I was bright. Mm-hmm. So, but one teacher, and I'll always forget Mr. Mullins, because he had this idea. We had a little tiny, like my library at home now, it's bigger than the library we had there at school. But he in order to keep me out of trouble, because I'd get through things and then I'd get restless, he gave me the key to the school library. Anytime I got finished with things and was ready, I could go to the school library. So I read every book in the school library. I mean, that was smart of him.
Yeah.
He saw individuals instead of groups.
Yeah. And it also, but he also knew, because you are bright and you were as a kid, that sometimes people move around and they get antsy because they're bored. And bored. Yeah, and sending you to the library, would be a really good thing, because when everybody else maybe is satisfied with doing one thing and your creative mind wants to do something else, where's a better place for you to be but the library, where you're learning and filling your brain with information? It's a great thing.
He was smart. He was very bright. We have more of that now. I have a friend of mine whose wife is a teacher, and she told me one time she hadn't read a book in 30 years.
Oh, wow.
I said, what? You're a teacher and you don't read? Well, of course, they're using machines, and many schools don't even have books anymore.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to see the correlation between reading and education, because reading forces you to analyze, to digest, whereas you just look at a television screen or a computer screen, and you don't really get. It's not the same impact. It's not education as such. And Common Core and all that. Which is indoctrination. We're indoctrinating our kids. And I see it with my grandkids.
Yeah.
One of my grandkids. He came home one time when he was 14 or so, and he says, "We're doing a book report on Grapes of Wrath." I said, "Okay, I got that book." And no, he says, "No, we're doing a book report on the movie." I mean, give me a our kids can't even. Many of them can't. They graduate high school. I can't remember the percentage, but it's a large percentage graduate from high school can't even read.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy, and also, there is something to be. Now, I use Kindle all the time and things like that, but there is something to be said in actually holding a book in your hands. There's using that one of your senses. I mean, there is something that kind of makes the learning even better and adheres to the brain. But we don't have that, and everything is in 5-minute increments, if that. Maybe 2 minutes is all that they can focus on. And it's a shame. And I think that parents, they're trying to do the best for their kids, and they think they're doing the best for their kids by allowing them to do all of this because everybody else is doing it. And it also puts less pressure on the parents. But what they're doing, they're changing the brains of their kids. They really are, and they don't realize it.
Well, you make them dependent upon technology. You make them dependent upon their peers. I mean, then it's just one step away from being dependent upon government.
Yeah.
And look, we are now 46th in the world when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of press. 46th in the world, and it's primarily due to political correctness and self-censorship. Journalists are afraid to speak on any subject or write on any subject that is not approved by essentially the liberals.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just keeping you shut up.
This is no different. I mean, I see this no different from the early years with communism. I really don't. You
don't? Yeah.
I know, and this whole thing about monuments is also to shut you up. And I have to say, I see this with President Trump, and he had a good opportunity to come out and say white supremacist. What he did was, he did. He absolutely did, and he also blamed the other people who were creating problems and doing wrongdoing. So, I look at this though as this is just if you will, it's a 2.0 up from white privilege. I mean, that white privilege, you're not hearing that anymore because we've gone on to white supremacy, and it's just going to keep advancing until the message is whites are bad, everybody else is good. I mean, and I don't understand why some people can't see that.
Well, Susan, one of the things, what people fail to realize now, the whole outcry among the media, the whole outcry right now is that the white supremacists, KKK, they're creating fascism in our country.
Yeah,
Susan, these people have very little financial support from anybody.
I know.
They're such small numbers. They may be reprehensible, but they don't really compose a threat to our society.
No.
The left is the one who's been doing all the rioting, tearing up college campuses, et cetera, and et cetera. Right. And those people are well supported. I mean, they're financed.
Yes.
But these people, KKK, they're never going to be a threat to this country.
No, I mean, you look at Antifa. I mean, those people, they get to go out and just coming out to go someplace into a protest. They're already breaking law in most states because you're not allowed to wear a mask on your face in public. Right. You're not allowed to cover up your face. Yeah, and so
with ball bats.
Yeah, exactly. And so why? And I know the answer before I ask, but why are they being allowed to do that? That needs to be stopped. If you really want to stop the hate that you're seeing, then stop Antifa from showing up at protests with masks and baseball bats, like you said. So
people can prevent people from speaking that they don't agree with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, I copied down, Susan, I thought your listeners might enjoy this quote from George Orwell, who was very prescient on what was happening. He said, and this is what's happening right now, every record has been destroyed. This is even him writing.
Mm-hmm.
Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. And the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right.
Scary, isn't it?
I mean, this was, in 1984.
Right.
That was written in 1954, I believe, something like that. But he could. And this is what they're doing with breaking this thing, destroying history. Well, Russia did it. Hitler did it. You destroy the old history and you replace it. We didn't go so far. The Soviet Union even went so far that if you were part of the leadership and you fell in discredit, they removed your picture from group pictures that appeared in history books and so forth.
Yeah.
And we're doing that. We're doing that right now.
And it's a good way. It's a good reminder to show people this isn't anything new. That's
It's
why.
not,
Yeah, and you can call it progressivism if you want. It's still communism, and people. That's why they need to wake up and realize that this is just the same old communist playbook being played out right before your eyes in 2017.
Oh yeah. What this is? Many people don't realize that communism, pure communism, was practiced by the first settlers into America, way before 1847 and 1848 when Marx showed up at Jamestown, 1609, became the first successful colony. But Governor Thomas Dale said at the beginning that everybody would pool all their resources, and everybody according to everybody what they needed.
Right.
Guess what? 80% of them, first 2 years, 80% of them died. They were resorting to cannibalism.
Yep.
And he finally had enough sense to know each person given his own parcel of land, and he said they never lacked from there on. Same thing in Plymouth Colony in 1620. Bradford said, Governor said, everything from the common stock. They almost starved to death and almost resorted to cannibalism before he got smart. So we've never had that thing again, the communism until actually it began to go, in the 1920s. Actually, when it began to come back again. And,
well, and it's too, another George Orwell comment that you put in your book that I think is really good. He said, "The further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it."
Oh yes,
and aren't we seeing that?
Oh, Susan, you can see it every day. I mean, talk about hate groups. I mean, fry 'em like bacon. What do we want? Dead cops. And, this kind of thing.
Right.
How come? And almost nothing said about it, but you get a bunch of weird-looking white supremacists or something. You get a few of them together, and man, suddenly they're the biggest threat in the world to the whole society, and they're no threat at all.
Well, and you don't even have to be a neo-Nazi. There was a guy in Colorado just recently who had a haircut, and so he had, tight on the side and some on the top, and he got out of his car, and somebody came over, with all of Charlottesville going on and everything, ran over to him and said, "Are you a neo-Nazi?" And before he could really answer no, it's kind of wonder why somebody's asking that question, a guy tries to stab him with a knife, and he puts his hand up and, gets a cut in his hand and has to go get 3 stitches, for it, just because he's white and he has a haircut that somebody else doesn't necessarily like.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
it's crazy.
Well, we're weird. Well, chaos, is the mother of socialism,
right?
Because who was Terry? No, it's not Terry McAuliffe, but one of Obama's advisors. My gosh, I've got a mind slip here. He said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Oh, Eric Holder.
Yeah.
Is one. Yeah. Van Jones is another one. Valerie Jarrett. You name them.
Yeah, there was never let a good crisis. Well, collective government thrives on such opportunities. They thrive on chaos. Yeah. Because it gives him that opportunity to control, for more control. So there's a reason all this chaos is occurring. It's been instigated. And in the book, I go on who does it, who's involved in it, the different groups that are involved, how they support it. I go through the whole thing in there. I did a lot of research to put it all together there, and it's going to shock people how many people. Ford Foundation, for example, they supported a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And Hitler got his ideas from eugenics practice in the 1920s by such as Margaret Sanger and Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt. That's where he in Mein Kampf, he gives acknowledgement to America for some of the ideas that he had for eugenics. Well, okay, Teddy Roosevelt. This is a quote from him. Society has no business to permit degenerates to reproduce. This is Teddy Roosevelt.
Well,
it goes on and on.
I know, and Chuck, if you listen to the left, they make these people into heroes. I mean, Hillary Clinton, she just loved Margaret Sanger and thought she was wonderful. And it's amazing that the people on the left who follow her and others like Obama, these are the people that wanted to get rid of you. The one she's talking about, the one she's praising. And yet somehow I don't know how it escapes people in history.
Well, because we're not taught history anymore.
Yeah.
We're not taught history. I teach history at community college. I've done it for about 40 years, history and other subjects. And they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear these things. They don't want to hear anything that goes against the current orthodoxy.
Right. And
if you speak of it, you offend somebody.
Right. Yeah.
It's bizarre.
We can't speak about anything anymore unless it totally agree with what is being said on the left. If you disagree with it one iota, then again, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a this, you're a that, whatever it is.
Yeah, you cannot disagree. That's why we're now 47th free speech, 46th free speech, and so forth. 47% of our young people now in a survey look favorably upon socialism.
Yes.
Look at the support for Weird Bernie. I mean, all the weird people. I mean, that guy could have become president. And he's an avowed Marxist. Well, you don't call yourself that now. You call yourself a progressive or whatever. But the guy was an avowed Marxist. He honeymooned in Moscow, for Pete's sake.
Wow. Well, and if it hadn't been for Hillary Clinton wanting her time as president and getting him out, pushing him out, he very well would have been. And he's even, and I know he's, in his 70s or whatever, but he's seriously thinking, well, maybe in 2020, I should come back again. And it's like, and he would have a darn good chance from those people on the left who absolutely believe that he is it,
Oh yeah, Susan. That's the thing that astounds me, is how many people, especially young people, look favorably on socialism without thinking about the 100 million people that socialism was responsible for. Death, for killing, with Mao Zedong and Stalin and Lenin and Hitler. And, we keep thinking, everything you hear is fascism. Everything here is fascism. You don't speak about communism because that's looked upon favorably. Like FDR said, some of my best friends are communists, this kind of thing. But Hitler was third when it comes to mass killing. Mao Zedong was first. Stalin was second, and he was only third when it comes to mass killings. But you never read that. We never learn that. It's all the same.
Yeah, because it doesn't suit the agenda either, to bring truth out. And one of the things that reminded me when just recently when the statue came down in Durham, North Carolina, when I think it was Robert E. Lee, the statue, that somebody put a rope around the statue and tore it down, and they have subsequently arrested 4 people who did that, thankfully, because they committed a crime when they did it. And people, it's so funny. They've started a GoFundMe account now to, please help us. It's like, okay, no. But when they took that statue down, they erected another statue, and I don't even know what it's made out of, or, if it's official or how long, even if it's still there. But immediately they took it down and they put a statue of a black pregnant woman and called it Lady Liberty. And
my God.
I know, and I thought that was very symbolic of changing history, and also I noted it wasn't a man. And the pregnant woman, to me, signified, the start of a new, just a new transformation into something else, into communism, which in their minds was new, but it's not.
No, well, of course not. I mean, like I said, we started out in this country with communism, and it didn't work.
Right.
Right away that it didn't work. And it never has worked. Never has socialism worked anywhere. But yet, we keep going back to it again. It always ends up in tyranny. And that's just part of Tytler's cycle. The collective is just part of his cycle.
Well, and have you noticed also when they remove these monuments lately, and it hasn't escaped my attention, that they do so under cover of darkness. Like Baltimore took down like 4 in the middle of the night, and somebody else, they want to take them all down. Do you notice that they're not asking the people what they want? They're making that decision for the people.
Well, of course. Absolutely. We're having a series of crystal moms.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I clearly see what this is leading to. I mean, it's easy if you know history. It's not that difficult to see that this has happened again and again and again. And then how it always leads to tyranny again. And okay, giving the idea, freedom of speech and freedom of press and this kind of thing. Schumer introduced a bill. It wasn't passed, but he introduced a bill to license all journalists by the government down to bloggers. Now we know how well that worked in communist China. I mean, and. We were talking earlier, Susan. I want to bring this point. We were talking earlier about e-books and Kindle and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Did you know books like Huckleberry Finn? They're being censored in many schools, and they're also being edited to reflect political correctness through e-books and so forth. And a lot of books are being done that way. And that's the thing with putting all these books on electronics.
Yeah.
There won't be any preservation. Do you remember the the movie called Logan's Run?
Yes.
And remember the old man when everybody died when they were 30 because there's no need for them. Nobody read, nobody had education. They were just taken care of. But this couple escaped, and they ended up going to this old man that had never seen an old man before. And he had a library, and they'd never seen a book before. I mean, I just keep thinking about that. How I think it's ominous.
We're headed there. Yeah, we're headed there, and it's part of what we talk about sometimes. It's part of the end times. I mean, if you really want to look at it, and maybe every generation has said that, but it just seems like we are just sliding very fast. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Let's look. In Revelations, it talks about in the end, knowledge will increase, but wisdom will decline, or something. I can't remember the exact quote.
Right.
But it talks about this idea that there will be so much more knowledge, but that mankind will. I call it now we're having a new Tower of Babel. And in what it yes, we look at things like wars and so forth. We're on the verge right now. And where the war is supposed to start is the final battle of Armageddon and all that, which won't be the end of that does not summon in Jesus at that time. But we all mistakenly think that will do it, but it doesn't. And but we see this occurring and it's playing out all through the Middle East. And I've been asked to do an article. I'm going to Jerusalem, to Israel in November.
Nice.
I've been asked to do an article on Israel and how they've managed to escape. So they get terrorists, of course, but they take care of them. I mean, a terrorist is not real safe in Israel.
No.
So they have less, and you think they'd have much more because everybody's against the Jews, all the Arabs and everybody else against the Jews, but they have less than in Europe now. And they want me to write an article on why and how they managed to do this. And to me, it's pretty obvious. Having been a cop and having been in special forces, I mean, you can see what you do if you kowtow. And but we're going to have terrorism that just started in this U.S.
I know.
And we haven't seen anything yet.
Well, and terrorists looking at people out in the middle of the street, hitting each other, killing each other, whatever, over statutes. They're sitting there laughing, knowing that we're ridiculous. I mean, people over in the Middle East right now, with the terrorists are getting blown up every day. There's in Damascus, there's been people killed in Damascus recently because they're getting fired upon. Israel has said that they have found that there's missiles being made over in Syria by Iran, and they're not going to let it stay. They're not going to let the plant stay there. And so when all of this is the serious stuff, is really going on, and then we have people who are complaining about statutes. Now the guy who killed the woman in Charlottesville, that was a horrendous thing. All caused, though, in a lot of respects, because this wasn't about free speech. This wasn't about the First Amendment. This was about people who were paid, bussed in to be there and to cause trouble.
Oh, exactly. And they are causing it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Susan. Maybe I do know. Maybe that's the problem. I do.
Yes, you do know.
And I can see these things happening. I mean, I've been to wars and everything else, but we now. Oh well, don't get me started on the military. We're destroying our military.
Yeah. My
military. We're destroying it with all this political correctness crap. I took Desert Storm. Give you an example here, and I'm going to be very popular. I mean, I can imagine I've gotten all kinds of hate mail, of course, that I've written stuff on a book and everything else. And I've been in Special Forces, but I was activated and deployed for Desert Storm, 1991. Had an MP company, first sergeant for an MP company. And in that MP company, I had 120 soldiers, 21 of whom were women. Now, I'd been in Special Forces, and we didn't at that time. Now they're trying to put women in Special Forces and SEALs, which is not going to work.
Right.
And I'm not anti-woman, No, it's just that I'm practical.
Yep.
We're to win wars, and here I am. Half of my women end up pregnant. I'm having in the middle of the war. One of my soldiers is having a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. My men are fighting over the women. The women are. Don't you know if you put young men and women together in circumstances like that, what's going to happen?
Right.
Morale destroy itself. You can't have a mission when you've got that kind of turmoil. It's just not going to happen. And
but isn't that the agenda? Isn't that the plan?
It
for
is
that
the
to
plan.
happen? Yeah.
It is the plan. You were destroying our military.
Yeah.
And with all this political correctness, because we don't want. I forget who now said this, but one of the U.S. senators, one of the female U.S. senators, said we want a kinder, gentler military. Said, what? What?
Oh.
The purpose of a military is to break things and kill people who are trying to kill us.
Yeah, I know. But, I mean, that's our whole... It's our whole nation, our whole world is changing. And people on the right, most people on the right, they're aware of how it's not going to work. But why is it that we seemingly are so outnumbered by those on the left, and they continue to carry the agenda and get their word out better than the rest of us? What are your thoughts on that?
Because they control the institutions.
Yeah.
They control media. They control education. They've destroyed destroyed the family with the feminist movement and the gay movement and gay marriage, and you've destroyed families. What you've done, and so if you control those institutions, politics, they control politics. You say, well, they don't, but they do, through the media, through education, through family, through politics, through economics, there's all the institutions which started in earnest in 1945 with the Frankfurt School. Yep. And they've been succeeding. And so that, if you control institutions, you're going to seem like you outnumber your opponents. And that was part of Stalin, that's what he said. And Hitler said the same thing. You tell a big lie often enough, and the bigger the better, soon people will believe it's the truth.
Right.
And so people believe it's the truth now, that this big lie that everybody wants progressivism, which is not true, but it seems they outnumber regular people.
Yeah.
But they don't, because they control the institutions. But they're going to. All these safe spaces on college campuses, and
yes.
you come out as these college graduates, they come out totally ignorant.
Yeah. Well, they're not taught anything. They're taught how to go out and be an activist or something like that, and they're not really studying books and history and anything else. And we see the left doing that too. They'll say so many things about President Trump, and it doesn't have to be true, but if they say it over and over,
Yes.
people will believe it.
Well, like the Russian collusion thing, they've kind of left that up now because that wasn't working. Now they're going to the he's a racist because of
right.
The whole white racism and all that. That's what he is. That's the new mantra.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work, then there'll be another one.
Absolutely. It'll just keep going for as long as 4 years, 8 years, or until they can, I hate to say this, but until they try to physically remove him out of the office. And who I never thought in my lifetime I would be saying that and really feeling that there was a concern that these people would try to do something like that.
Oh, they're going to, Suze. I predict next he will be impeached. That doesn't mean he'll be kicked out of office, but they will impeach him if he wins election, re-election. They will impeach him, I promise you that. Because I suspect that at least the Senate will be recaptured in next year by the Democrats, and because the Republicans, they've become what Trump calls the swamp.
Yeah, they have.
They've become part of that swamp. They're establishment people.
Yeah, John McCain, one of the biggest ones. Paul Ryan. Lindsey Graham, all of those people. They've been in there for so many years, and they have become part of the problem, and they're continuing to thwart the efforts of this president. They're undermining him in different ways by going on, media and talking about him and not so positive light. It's horrible.
Yeah, I was speaking at CPAC last year, I guess it was, and it was full of Oklahoma politicians and this kind of thing. And I espouse the view that our forefathers never intended politics to be a career. We should have limited terms in office.
Yep.
And the next day, on a radio interview about it, I made the remark that 99% of politicians give the other 1% a bad name.
It's true.
You think I'm popular? You think I'm not popular with politicians?
I know. They're not going to like you. Well, and I tell you, we could keep going with this, but we have absolutely run out of time. I think that's probably the fastest hour on record. But our guest today has been Charles Sasser, author of Crushing the Collective, The Last Chance to Keep America Free and Self-Governing. Comes out on September the 5th. Look for it on Amazon, WND.com, and in their bookstores, I would imagine. And Charles, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Susan. I've enjoyed talking with you, and God bless.
Yeah, God bless you, and we'll have you back another time. Like I said, you've got 60 books, so we've got we could do a show on any number of those books. But
I've done 5 within the past year.
Oh my gosh! Well, and keep on writing those because you're a historian, like you said, and we have to have that because if we lose that, we're going to absolutely lose the America. I mean, we've already lost a lot of it, but we're going to lose everything that we had. And I would suggest you putting those in a time capsule that nobody knows where they're at, so that we make sure that they stay there.
Yeah. I would say one thing, quick. There are only 3 politicians that I have much regard for. One of them is Ronald Reagan. One of them is Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, and the other one is Winston Churchill.
Yeah. No, and I get that, and I hope we have some good people that step up, in the coming elections. And I know it's going to be really tough, but I hope they do, and that they step up with the opinion of, I'm here not to benefit myself, but I'm here to do what's right for this country. It would certainly be a refreshing thing to see. So, but Charles Sasser, thanks so much for your being here today. Really appreciate it. God bless you. God bless everybody who's listening. And we'll see you again next week. Until then, take care of yourself. Be kind to each other. And we'll be back next week. God bless.